Today I'm going to find out the best time-lapse settings for moving cars and traffic. From my other time-lapse videos linked in the description and the eye in the corner, I showed you why it's good to photograph time-lapses with the 180° shutter rule taken into consideration. This is where the shutter speed is half the length of your frame rate. So whatever my interval between the shots of the time-lapse are, the shutter speed has to be half of this to give good movement. Here is an example of a time-lapse following the 180° shutter rule. And here's one that doesn't follow the rule. As you can see, if you have a really high shutter speed, even though each image will be sharp, in a time-lapse it will give you this kind of staccato look, and it's jittery and it just doesn't look that good. Whereas when you introduce motion blur by halving the shutter speed compared to your interval time, the movement becomes more fluid and natural. To get these slower shutter speeds, you will need an ND filter. And if you're not sure about ND filters, click on the eye in the corner or the link in the description to another of my videos. Now, it's one thing to know about the 180° rule, but there's a bit more to it than that. Cars move at different rates, so you need to adjust the interval time and shutter speed for each scenario you're hoping to photograph. If you're hoping to get a time-lapse of a busy highway, or motorway as we say in the UK, you will need different settings compared to when photographing in a city or where there is much slower traffic like at a junction or an intersection. So today I'm going to find out and give you lots of different examples so you can see what would work best for you in the scenario you want the time-lapse in. In this first example, I've set the interval to 1/6 of a second or 6 frames a second. When compiled into a 25 frames a second sequence, the cars flow faster than normal but not much faster. This could be mistaken for a normal video. In the second example, the interval is at half a second and the traffic flows nicely. You can still see the cars and the motion blur gives nice smooth motion. With an interval of 1 second, the cars really start to move fast and it's hard to make out the details on individual cars. This higher speed makes it look like a really busy high-speed motorway. With a 5-second interval, it looks more like a flowing stream of vehicles. You can't make out the vehicle's details at all, and at 10 seconds the cars start to blend into each other, and it's hard to tell the direction of flow. Now these cars are travelling between 80 and 120 km per hour, and the best setting for me seems to be at around about half a second interval with a 1/4 second shutter speed. Here are all the examples side by side so you can decide for yourself. You might like the slower flow, or you may prefer the faster stream of traffic, and if you pause the video, you'll see how the motion blur differs between sequences. Another thing with this is to know what you're intending on using the time-lapse for. If it's for speeding cars, you'll want a longer interval to make the cars look like they're going faster. Whereas if it's to show the density of traffic on a given road, you might want to have shorter intervals to make that traffic look slower and more dense. And also, if you go at a time when you know that road is going to be busy, this will add to that effect. So knowing what you want to achieve before you shoot it is half the battle. At the next location, there is a roundabout between these buildings and a car park, with a road in the distance that is slower than the previous example of the highway. With an interval of 1/6 of a second, the cars are travelling at a decent pace on the road, but in the car park they do look very slow. With an interval of half a second, the cars look much faster on the road, and in the car park it's starting to feel more like a time-lapse. You can see there is a hive of activity in this area as you'd expect in a busy city. When the interval is set to 1 second, the cars lose detail on the road, but in the car park it definitely has the look of a classic time-lapse. With a 2-second interval, the activity starts to look quite hectic, but you can still see the movement of the slower vehicles in the car park and on the roundabout. With a 5-second interval, it looks like the traffic is travelling at light speed and is too fast for most uses. And with a 10-second interval, you start to lose the proper sense of movement, and even the shadows from the clouds really fly by. Now it is quite hard to work out which one looks best for this scenario. I prefer the one with a 1-second interval and a 1/2 second shutter speed, but let me know what you think in the comments below. Again, here they all are side by side so you can see which type of movement you prefer. If you look at the 10-second interval shot in the lower right-hand corner and then look at the 1/6 interval straight after, you can really see how a shorter interval slows down the motion in your frame. One other thing to take into consideration is the direction of travel. When the cars are moving across your frame, a shorter interval will still give you a fast pace. In this first example, I have an interval of half a second, and the cars already look fast. In this second example, I've set it to 1/3 of a second. And the third example, the interval is at 1/6 of a second. So for me, the last example works the best. Once again, here they all are side by side so you can decide for yourself. Also, these interval times might change depending on what focal length you have. I shot the highway coming straight to the camera on a really wide angle lens, whereas I shot this one of the highway on an 85mm. So this may have an effect as well, because the distance from one side of the frame to the other will be shorter relative to the wider focal length. Now, you may have preferred different interval times to what I chose, and that's all right. It's all down to personal preference. And if you do, once again, let me know in the comments below. It'll be great to hear what you think. Now, if you like this video, make sure you give me a thumbs up. And if you want to see more and learn more, click on this next video where I show you how I edit my time lapses. And if you've seen that already, click down here for my playlist on all of my time-lapse videos. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe for more videos and tutorials. I'll see you next time.